But
no
as I
company is
said,
perfect. It's amazing how patient audiences are. If they
Right.
know you're trying, they know you've got your culture in the right place, your morals in the right place, your moral compass pointed in the right place, people will stick with you.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the example that we talked about earlier with Patagonia.
Yes.
They out themselves for their bad behavior. They
Yes.
wear it like a flag. They're proud. We're not perfect.
So
Here's our
great.
shortcomings. Let's talk about our shortcomings.
It's so refreshing,
Yeah.
isn't it? I mean, I think that's what people really crave today, is they're actually looking for people to just be square with them. Like, whatever your crap is, just be honest about it. Don't give me one thing and do something else.
They want to turn that conflict into a conversation.
That was brilliant.
Yeah.
That was what I tweeted. That was your quotable tweet that I just put out
Well,
there.
in the interest of transparency, I stole that one from the folks over at Patagonia. But that was the core mission behind why they created the Footprint Chronicles and all the other content.
Yeah.
Is there's going to be a conflict. Let's create a conversation.
That's great. I love it. Well, let's officially start this. So, Jeff, I'm so excited that you decided to sit down with me here at the Social Shakeup in Atlanta. Your presentation was awesome. In fact, I saw one of your new fans, it sounds like, right afterwards come up to you and say you were the best speaker so far. And I couldn't agree more. I loved seeing it the first time, and the second time was even better. So,
Thank you for the kind words. I appreciate that.
So, if people don't know, tell us a little bit about your book, Friction. How did you end up writing it, and what inspired you to go out there and get other brands involved in doing what Patagonia's done?
Yeah. Well, I think the journey to create the book probably started 19 years ago when we started our agency called Questus. And we're a digital shop. We've worked with what feels like almost all the great and influential brands out there: Apple, American Express, NFL, ESPN, Universal, Disney, Suzuki Motorcycles, Wyndham Hotels, you name it. And a few years ago, I started getting bored with the day-to-day, and I started seeing that the future of branding and advertising was really going through a revolution. So we created a documentary called The Naked Brand. Went down to the bottom of the Grand Canyon, was having this crazy experience, and realized, wait a second, why don't we go tell this story? So we thought we were going to piss people off with this story. We thought nobody was going to watch it because we were saying, look, advertising is filled with problems, and we need to embrace the fact that the way that human beings communicate has gone through a revolution. The way that brands communicate is caught in the Mad Men era. Turns out that there was no backlash. People loved it. We went around the world multiple times. There's crowds and awards and cheering. It was great. And then what we realized is we didn't get to a point of providing actionable guidance. We talked about the revolution that was coming, and a documentary is not a great vehicle for providing actionable guidance. So that's what Friction is all about. We realized that there's a subset of brands we call passion brands. These are the brands that absolutely dominate the competition. So we started by understanding, okay, what are these brands doing? And it turns out that they're fighting friction. They're improving people's lives one small step at a time, and that's what Friction is all about. So with the book, what we tried to do is keep it from being your really typical business book where it's, 300 pages, you get on point, you make a great point, and you stay on that point. We designed it very much like a coffee table book, and it's got a lot of design and style and large fonts and pullouts and a lot of snackable content. So there might be like a one-page story, there might be a 10-page story, and we created this whole story arc that talks about industrial friction, what's holding back everybody in every industry, organizational friction, what are some great case studies of brands that are fighting friction, and then we even got into personal friction, like what can we do at a personal level to help ourselves become more creative and more effective at work.
Wow, it's on all those different levels.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. So you talked in your talk just now about several very notable passion brands that I think everybody's probably familiar with. If you're not, look up Patagonia and the stories that Jeff talks about and celebrates. Do you know of any local small businesses here in Atlanta or local to anywhere in that you can think of that you could recommend? Our audience at GoDaddy is primarily small business owners, and a lot of them, I think, can really learn from you and do something amazing and become huge one day if they want.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because the reason we actually go into business is we see that there's a problem that we can solve, whether you're one person or you grab a few friends or there's a dozen of you, but we all go into business for one reason, is to solve that problem. And that's what fighting friction is all about. As organizations get larger, they get caught up in the mechanics of how do we drive revenue, how do we optimize our performance, how do we bet better 30-second spots, how do we buy TV ads at a lower rate. That means that the small businesses have a distinct advantage. They're obviously much more nimble, but they also have greater visibility into what that root issue is. So off the top of my head, I don't know any really small companies in Atlanta, but one that comes to mind as you ask it is Cho Chocolate in San Francisco, which is not a small business anymore.
Anymore.
It's a really big business. I think anyone who goes to GoDaddy and wants to start their own business would be ecstatic if they wound up with a company the size of Cho Chocolate, TCHO Chocolate. And they started with this concept of how do we empower the audience? How do we embrace the audience? How do we get them involved in giving us guidance, coming up with flavors, opening up the factory, bringing them into the factory? Because only a part of a brand's success, only a part of the brand is the actual product, and it's a critical part. But there's a lot of chocolate companies out there, and they realize there's a larger story. Now, you could tell that story through a 30-second spot, but 89% of the world is going to ignore those ads. You can tell that story through a banner ad, but you've got a better chance of surviving a plane crash than clicking on a banner ad. So what they did is they created immersive content and immersive experiences. They got the audience involved, and now they're a smashingly successful company that's probably global at this point.
Wow, that's an amazing story. I'm glad I asked. I am actually a fan of Cho Chocolate, and another brand local to San Francisco where I live is Smitten Ice Cream, and they always have Cho Chocolate in their ice cream. Do you know the Smitten story?
No.
So the woman who started it, and I don't remember her name, but she came up with a different way to make ice cream using a measurement called Kelvin and nitrogen. So every individual ice cream that is served in their San Francisco stores is mixed by this giant machine with nitrogen, with fresh cream, and often Cho Chocolate.
Nitrogen is like dry ice almost?
Yeah, it's like you can see, the smoke that kind of
I've seen that on Food Network shows.
Exactly.
They're dumping the thing. I'm always like, wow, it looks pretty dangerous.
It's never frozen until the moment that it's made in front of you.
It's perfect. Oh, the moment it's made in front of you. See, that's the other thing, is part of that is the product, but part of it is the experience, right? Watching that get made right in front of you. Blind taste test, let's just assume it's better. But in a blind taste test, it might not be fundamentally better. But when you open up the entire experience, sight, sound, motion, smoke everywhere, getting involved, customization, it makes it taste a lot better. We're really complicated creatures as human beings. It's not just about that direct relationship between our brains and our taste bud. There's a lot more going on. So whether you're in the food industry, which we can all relate to, restaurants, ice cream, chocolate, or you're just opening a pool cleaning business, there's only a small percentage of it is the actual product, is the actual service. You have to look at the entire end-to-end experience. And when I say end-to-end, I don't just mean customers into prospects. I mean prospects into evangelists. Because I'm going to be in San Francisco relatively soon. I'm going to go to that ice cream shop because you are an evangelist. And because of this video, you're a digitally enabled brand evangelist. Because you got the one-to-one, but now you've got the one-to-many. And that's a lesson that anyone can learn from watching this video.
It's absolutely true. And I think if you've never seen it, go out and just look for Smitten Ice Cream right now after you're done watching this video. You will find a ton of user-generated content because guess what else? You're going to pull out your phone when you get there and you're going to make either an Instagram story or something similar because you cannot help yourself. It's the kind of experience that you just...
It's amazing. Like, when you think about food, it's amazing the percentage of people that take those photos and post them on Instagram, post it on Facebook. I'm older, I'm 46, so I'm not natural of that generation. So very often I'll participate, and very often I'm like, just put the phone down, right? You don't need to photograph everything. But the truth of the matter is that's what's going on. And you can buy ads or you can build evangelists. And we know that evangelists are 12 times, the most prudent form of research I could find shows that recommendations from friends or even complete strangers are 12 times more trusted than ads. Now, I'm not anti-advertising. I make ads for a living. I just know that we're asking advertising to do too much. Ultimately, the goal is to create an army of brand evangelists. It's interesting that you bring that up because they had a pop-up shop right next to my apartment for Magnum ice cream. And it was very interesting because what they did is you can buy the ice cream on a stick, and then they dip it in the chocolate right in front of you, and then they roll it in some toppings right in front of you, which is pretty cool and really interesting, and the kids absolutely loved it. And the truth of the matter is, I think if you went across the street to the corner store and just bought one in a package, it would probably taste really similar. But the experience was so engaging. But here's what they did that was crazy. They set up a bunch of booths all around the retail pop-up that they had, and each of them had a cool design and were saying, hey, here's a cool place to take a photo. So instead of just creating a cool experience where everyone was Instagramming it, they facilitated that, and they created the hashtags and all these great places to take a photo. So one of the things that we know is we're probably not going to fundamentally change consumer behavior through social media, but what we can do is we can identify that behavior and we can supercharge it. And that's what those guys over at Magnum were doing, is creating those opportunities to supercharge that social media.
That's awesome. I love that idea. And speaking of social media, I think every business owner, and if they're already in business and they're not trying to come up with a new business idea, we all pretty much have websites these days and a presence on social media. So I think we can apply what you were just talking about brand evangelists and advocacy into the whole digital process. It drives me nuts that I've been in brand advocacy since, I don't know if you know Rob Fujetta, who wrote the book Brand Advocates, and he started a company called Zuberance. That's where I went to work before I was at GoDaddy. And this is like back in 2011. People were talking about that same metric that you just shared 12 times. More likely to believe what our friends tell us than an ad. But yet, today, you still see people wasting the opportunity. To me, after every sale is made, you are not done until you've created an advocate. So why, at the end of every digital experience, so few people just emulate what Amazon does? As soon as you check out, they say, would you like to share the fact that you made this purchase with your social network? It's a very simple thing you can add to your digital experience as you're building your website or having your webmaster build your website. See, I'm kind of old too. We used to call them webmasters.
Way back in the day.
I was one.
Webmasters got replaced by the cloud.
It was kind of marketing because really I did that job. It was more appropriately called a web slave. But anyway, I digress. I think every business owner can apply what you were just talking about to their process by simply adding an advocate action after the sale. It's not hard to do.
Absolutely.
And I think that, I used to say that people are actually waiting. It's kind of like if you remember in grade school when you passed a note to someone that you thought was cute, and then if they didn't reciprocate, you kind of start to feel weird the next time you saw them. I think that's the way we feel about brands. When we fall in love with a brand and we have a delightful experience and we're not asked to share it in today's world where there are a lot of brands that are doing this, we start to kind of feel like, I don't know, maybe there's some other brand out there that I should hang out with. So I think we're missing a huge opportunity by not applying that very basic idea. Let's talk about another brand in San Francisco. Are you familiar with Beta Brand?
I am, but probably not enough to have an intelligent conversation.
Well, I'm going to tell you, and then see if we can just jam on this for a minute and where it goes. So I'm a huge evangelist for Beta Brand. What they do, if you don't know, is they actually crowdsource design ideas. So you or I could come up with a design for a new piece of clothing, and we put it on there like a Kickstarter, and people vote on it. And they actually get a sale price if they agree to buy it before it goes into production. And the more people agree to buy it, and then it hits a threshold, then it goes into production. And then it goes online, and if it sells really well, it becomes part of their retail store in San Francisco. Next time you're there, visit Beta Brand. You will have a delightful experience, and I'm not going to blow the surprise for you. But they're examples of just, really scrappy ideas that were started, and now they're
Is it all
huge.
clothing, or?
It's all well, they're actually getting into more stuff. They're doing co-branding with other brands now, and I talked to the social media marketer. I was on a panel with her, and she said, we're now in the business of basically saying this is the clothing that the internet creates. The internet is creating this because you guys are all voting on it and coming up with your own ideas. So they're getting really huge. So that's another example, and I think it's a little bit harder to. It's kind of like coming up with the idea for an Airbnb or something like that. But there's still plenty of ideas out there. So that's actually my question out of this jam. Are all the opportunities gone?
Oh, no.
Okay, good.
Oh, no. The rate of change it's unprecedented and it's unparalleled. And, just when we started to figure out, okay, how do we master the computer? Mobile came along. And it changed everything. And then as we started to figure out mobile, social came along. Right? And the next frontier may be virtual reality. It might be stuff like that goes on in the back end that we don't see, which is artificial intelligence. There's always going to be the most incredible rate of change that we've ever seen. Moore's Law will continue to be applied. But the truth of the matter is it's not just technology. As we move more and more to a more technologically driven experience, there's also going to be this insatiable appetite for customer service. I work in technology every single day. It's amazing how much when I'm out of the office, I don't love using technology. I love Uber. One click, I get a car, I go somewhere. I love Amazon, 2 clicks and I've got what I need. But I don't want to spend my entire life in digital technology. But I'm one of 350 million people in America. There's tons of people who love it. There's tons of people who don't. But what everybody loves and what I love is customer service. I need someone to say, I care about you. I'm going to take care of you. Whether it's, something about my apartment, whether it's something about my car, something about my children, my clothing, my computers. I wouldn't shop at Beta Brand, right? I hear those examples. I'm like, that's really cool, but I'm a different target audience. It's fine, right? There's millions of people that it works for. And that's one of the things you got to keep in mind. If you're thinking about opening your own business through GoDaddy, it's hard to truly fathom how large this world is, how small and flat this world is. You can reach those billions of people, how gigantic our country alone is, 350 million approximate people. That is so many people, right? You only need to really resonate with a pretty small group of those people and create customers, create loyalty, create evangelism. You will grow rapidly. That's the power of social, that's the power of digital, is you can create that one-to-one connection.
It's so true. Now, you and I just talked briefly before we started this that we were both back in the day buying domains before GoDaddy was even around. So I don't know if young people today have any idea the friction that's been removed in getting your business online just by virtue of the price. And GoDaddy was really the disruptor back in the day. The price of a domain was, what, $70?
Well, I've seen this because if you go back only a few years ago, one of the key things that we did as an agency, as a digital agency, is we built websites. Very large, very complex, very expensive websites. By the time our clients were done, not just with us, but they'd have to spend internally, externally, multiple. These websites would cost millions of dollars. Even if you're a small business and you're trying to do it pretty affordably, you could easily spend hundreds of thousands of dollars. My son is 9 years old, and he's on a $168 Chromebook the other day, right? It's all cloud-based, barely has a hard drive, it's the cheapest computer you can buy. I'm like, dude, what are you working on over there? He's like, I got a website. I'm like, really? I'm like, yeah. He's like, now I'm up registering a domain name. He's got a domain name, he's got a website. He's like, you know what's really fighting back? You gotta help me with this. And I couldn't help him. I'm like, dude, this is over my head. And my 9-year-old figured out, he's like, I get a full membership area where all different people can register to use it. And he's like, hey dad, and now I've got an e-commerce area. Like, a 9-year-old. 9 years old. 4 years ago, these types of things cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars. And large corporations are probably continuing to spend at that level because A, they're used to it, and B, there's a higher degree of complexity that they may need. But the mom and pop shops and the startups, they can go to GoDaddy, not an ad, but they can go to GoDaddy or your competitors, and there's a lot of different places where you can create great websites and great digital experiences for an unbelievably low price. It's incredible how quickly you can get up and running as a small business nowadays.
Well, you just handed this to me on a silver platter, and I'm trying not to do this, but I just can't resist. Our latest product is called Go Central, and it allows you to build a site in under an hour, even on your phone, with a drag and drop WYSIWYG interface.
Even for knuckleheads like me?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm in. Right? I'm going to try it out.
You will never have to write another close bracket HTML tag again in your life.
It's amazing. Well, not only that, that's part of it, right? Part of it is that you don't have to have that time and investment. But the other thing that I love is those sites are going to be great because they've been optimized on the front end for consumer experience. You and I know I've been doing this for like 26 years. The biggest companies in the world with the biggest investments were creating sites that were completely unusable, which is bad enough in the fact that people can't complete their tasks and transactions, but it tells a larger story. Like, this is a brand that just doesn't get it. That 26 years of misery, that are the billions of dollars that have been spent,
right?
Now it's all optimized. So not only can you easily build the site, but the front end is beautiful and clean and simple. I looked at my son's website, I'm like, shoot, man, that is a really good website. Right? Like, he doesn't use Photoshop and all that, so we might not have the perfect image up front. And now that I think about it, it was actually a pretty good image. But they're built in ways where here's a big, beautiful hero shot, and here's your different sections. All those usability problems, they're gone now.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. And GoDaddy being in the business as long as we have, we were able to design a product that gives you a site that's mobile first and not just mobile optimized, but it's originally from the ground up, it's built for the mobile device because that's where people are. And I think a lot of people are still in this place of thinking, oh, that's for a really big business. I'll fix my mobile optimized version of my site one day. Yeah. The time is now because customers are going to appreciate and expect a mobile first experience because that's the world that we live in. So what advice would you give to your 9-year-old? And by the way, what is his website? Do you know the...
He's actually, I'm going to call him tonight and tell him to GoDaddy and register a domain, because he used tiny URL. So it's like tinyurl/bykids.
Oh, okay.
And the thing I'm trying to get to him is like, no, get a real domain.
We can solve this problem.
Yeah, we're gonna go daddy. Yeah,
there's some friction to remove for him. Okay, good. Well, then, as a follow up, you've got to let me know,
Yeah.
and we'll put it in the blog post for this interview, because I want to see what he's doing. So, what would you advise him to do next after he's launched his e-commerce website? It's mobile optimized. He's got a domain. What's his next move?
It's a great question, and we talked about it, and it's the same conversation that I have with all my clients, and going back to even our agency experience, which is, as I mentioned a few years ago, a big driver of what we did was develop complex websites. The world doesn't need that anymore. The cloud has solved most of those big complex websites. So we still design the front end and we make them beautiful and all of that. But the core focus that we have is great content, right? And it's interesting that people continue to talk about social media, because social media is just a distribution vehicle. You have to start with what's that brand platform and what do you stand for, and then create content that stretches across the entire consumer journey. Some of that sits in social, but one of the most important places it can sit is on your website. So whether you're my 9-year-old son or you're my multi-billion-dollar client, the way to succeed, the way to thrive, the way to dominate the competition is have powerful content that sits at the top of the funnel, awareness, the middle of the funnel, interest, the lower funnel, conversion, and all the way through evangelism. And everyone's looking for different content at different times. That's a big thing, right? It used to be, hey, let's create a story in the form of 30-second spot. We'd use something that we call the reach and frequency model, which is something in advertising that we've optimized. The consumers watching this, like, yeah, that's the stuff that was really annoying, seeing the same ad over and over and over again. We don't need to do that. We can tell a story that grows as people go across that journey.
Brilliant. You're making me think of the last time I was just watching a video online and an ad kept repeating over and over again. Why do they do that? Is it just because they can't sell the rest of the inventory, so they just repeat the ad? It makes me not want to buy the product from the company.
Isn't that true?
I hate
they're
that ad.
investing, in that example, they're investing millions of dollars in counterproductivity, right? They're turning you off instead of getting you excited about the brand. And the reason is they're hopelessly addicted to antiquated techniques. They're literally snorting antiquated techniques.
Right.
And again, going back to your audience watching the video, that's the advantage that startups have. That's the advantage that small businesses and mom and pops have, is they're not addicted to the techniques of yesteryear.
Yeah, that's so true. Okay, my final question, and then I'll let you go, because this is turning into longer than I thought, but I'm having such a good time.
Make sure you go to Tyler's website. We're going to get the domain name.
Okay, yes, Tyler's going to have a domain name that will be associated with this, that we'll be celebrating soon. My final question is, you talk a lot about brand standing for something. What is it like for a brand to decide, okay, I'm going to stick my neck out and I'm going to go out for a cause? Something really big, like Patagonia just recently did what was the campaign in Utah about bears?
Bears ears.
Bears ears, thank you. How does a brand decide to really up the ante and go out big for something that may be controversial or political? What's the process that they go through with your agency for really deciding on that issue to take a stand on?
That's a great question. That is also where your audience has a fundamental advantage, because if you work at a large corporation, you work at a public corporation, you're going to be naturally risk averse. And your job is going to be to make incremental improvements, which means you're probably going to do some really safe stuff, which means you're probably going to stay away from the stuff that's really important and is the really correct thing to do. So the reason that Under Armour had done so well for so long, the reason that Patagonia has done so well for so long, the reason that Cho Chocolate has done so well, they were started by one person or a very small team. They had complete conviction and were willing to take risks. So if your question is what's the process, large corporations have big processes to get there, where you're doing a bunch of strategy and you're looking for what we call white space, the place where you really believe in it and other brands are not there. And that's cool. That strategic planning is really important. But I think for your audience of small businesses, the answer comes here. It's in your heart and adhering to it. There's a reason that every single person that goes to GoDaddy and starts their own business does it. They've got conviction, they've got a belief, they've got a visibility, they've got a vision, they've seen something. You just got to stick with it, because the large corporations are not necessarily going to have that same vision or the conviction to take that risk.
Wow, really well said. I love that. And I think we're in an era where small businesses have unprecedented access to a feedback loop on social media.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you can put a tweet out there and see if it goes somewhere. You can just start a hashtag,
Yeah.
and that could turn into a company, and it has for many people.
Absolutely.
So you get that feedback right away. There's really no excuse for not figuring out something to stand for when you have access to that kind of immediate feedback.
So true. Well said.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking
Thank you
time
for having me.
today.
I appreciate it.
I can't wait to put this on the blog. I'll definitely let you know.
Cool.
And we'll take it from there.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.